The Mandalorian Season 1 is an American space western television series created by Jon Favreau for the streaming service Disney+. It is the first live-action series in the Star Wars franchise, beginning 5 years after the events of The Return of the Jedi in 1983, and stars Pedro Pascal as the title character, a lone bounty hunter who goes on the run to protect the child. Star Wars creator George Lucas had begun developing a live-action Star Wars television series back in 2009, but this project was deemed too expensive to produce. He sold Lucasfilm to Disney in October 2012. Subsequently, work on the new Star Wars series began for Disney+. Favreau signed on in March 2018, serving as a writer and showrunner. His executive producers alongside Dave Filoni, Kathleen Kennedy and Colin Wilson. The series title was announced in October 2018, with filming starting in Manhattan Beach Studios in California. Visual effects company Industrial Light and Magic developed the stagecraft technology for the series using visual sets and a 360-degree video wall to create the series' environments. This has since been adopted by other film and television productions. The Mandalorian premiered with the launch of the Disney Plus on November 12, 2019. The 8-episode first season was met with positive reviews and was nominated for Outstanding Drama Series at the 72nd Primetime Emmy Awards and won 7 Primetime Creative Emmy Awards. The premise for the show begins 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi and the fall of the Galactic Empire. The Mandalorian follows Din Djarin, a lone Mandalorian bounty hunter in the outer reaches of the galaxy. He's hired by remnant Imperial forces to retrieve the child, but instead goes on the run to protect the infant. The cast includes Pedro Pascal, who stars as Din Djarin, the series' title character. Pascal compared Djarin, a lone bounty hunter with advanced combat skills and questionable moral character, to Clint Eastwood. The character's real name is not given until Chapter 8 of The Redemption, but Pascal accidentally revealed it early in November 2019. His bounty in Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, is the child, colloquially known as Baby Yoda by viewers, an infant of the same species of Yoda, who was created with animatronics and puppetry and augmented with visual effects. The first season features recurring co-stars, including Carl Weathers as Grief Karga, the leader of the Bounty Hunter Guild, Werner Herzog as the client, an enigmatic man, Omid Abtadi as Dr. Pershing, a scientist working for the client, Nick Nolte as the voice of Keel, an Arknaut moisture farmer who helps the Mandalorian, Taika Waititi as the voice of IG-11, a bounty hunter droid, Gina Carano as Cara Dune, former rebel shock trooper turned mercenary, Giancarlo Espinato as Moff Gideon, a former Imperial officer, and Emily Swallow, the armorer, a Mandalorian who forges armor and equipment for the Berserker steel. After the series premiered, the child became a breakout character, with more attention on social media and news stories about it than any of the Democrats running for president at the time. By the end of November 2019, there was a huge demand for merchandise featuring the character. Disney's merchandising unit had begun planning for the character, but only released t-shirts featuring the concept art so far. Companies such as Hasbro had begun work on the child merchandise as well, but would not be ready until 2020. A large amount of unofficial merchandise began to appear ahead of the holiday season. Now, I find myself really enjoying the show. I've never been an out-and-out Star Wars fan, but I found this show really captured the essence of the Star Wars universe, as it was done so well in the original trilogy. Now, as you would expect, it's action-packed and expertly crafted. Of course, it also, though, withholds a lot of the information, as of course the story has to build. But for me, this is a welcome addition to the already expansive Star Wars universe, and it also benefits greatly from the cuteness of the so-called Baby Yoda in Season 1. It's just such a clever idea, as Yoda has always been one of the most synonymous characters with the Star Wars universe and most popular, so now to create a sort of baby form of him was just very, very smart. In many ways, you can see a lot of the influence on The Mandalorian from, say, a character like Boba Fett. It takes the sort of cool side of that character and transfers it over to a new character on an untouched canvas, while giving the audiences something that sort of feels familiar. The visual effects, the sound effects, and the overall look, of course, are absolutely polished, and this is a well-made Disney production at the end of the day. But Jon Favreau approaches this as a man who loves the Star Wars universe, and it's a nice way to tap into the Star Wars canon, as it were. Rather than focusing on the Skywalker saga, here we look at a different aspect of the Star Wars universe in The Mandalorian, an often misunderstood group of people. Now look, you've always got to approach these shows as a franchise. At the end of the day, this is adding to something that will come later on to keep you invested for the longer haul, as it were. But in saying that, though, it's still an enjoyable show on its own. You still have to remember, though, that this is a Star Wars show. You're expecting spacecraft, lightsabers, and big epic sequences taking place throughout the galaxy. It really doesn't need to be a full-on drama. In saying that, though, the characters are actually quite well developed and actually quite layered and interesting. And I really found the performance here by Pedro Pascal is quite enduring, even though you never really see his face. It couldn't have been easy to act under that mask, and yet he still invokes a lot of emotion, just through his tone of voice as well as his body language. For me, this is a real adventure show. Get taken on a ride, escape, and enjoy the spectacle of now seeing another side of this fantastical Star Wars universe. Well made, well produced, with solid acting and a good original story within a very expansive Star Wars universe, The Mandalorian Season 1 gets an 8.5 out of 10.